Let me ask you a question. Who's committed a greater sin? Those who are ignorant of things that were done long before they were born, right? And don't understand things that happened to other people, right? Or those who are using what happened in the past to accuse, slander, and commit injustices in the name of justice in the present against people who had no role to play in what happened in that past. Do two injustices make justice in the present? No, it doesn't. You see, those that use the past to blame those in the present are actually committing injustice. They're working against their own best interests. They're trying to leverage something that happened long before they were in this world, right? As a self-justification to gain power, wealth, influence, and control over those with them in the present. Who's that sound like? I can tell you. It's the same thing that you see happening here that is happening and is done from the CCP in China and Iran and in the Kremlin, among others. Now, why do they do this? Bitterness, entitlement, right? Pride, fear, vanity, the list goes on. No nation, just like no people, are without their insufficiencies, their mistakes, and their own sins and crimes. When you point out those of others without dealing with yours first, what you do is you create the conditions for worse consequences for you. Those who care about justice also care about truth. And I'm talking about those who truly care about justice. They also understand love and mercy. They also have humble and contrite hearts. So those that want to leverage the bones of the past and reconstruct them, right, to beat people up with them in the present, are not creating better conditions for the entire nation or themselves. They're ultimately setting themselves up for their own destruction, having committed more injustices in the name of justice, while not taking responsibility for their own actions in the present, while self-justifying them with the actions of others that long departed the planet. This is not new. This is what has happened throughout all of human history. It has characterized all the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations throughout your entire wreckage of human history. It is also what has continued, right? Human suffering, calamity, destruction, wars, and all manner of other evils and sufferings throughout all of human history. Why am I telling you this? Because the longer that you remain in a paradigm where this is the norm, the worse conditions are going to get, not only here in America and in Europe, but around the totality of the world. If you wish to have a better world, then you're going to all have to take responsibility for your own individual choices, your own insufficiencies, right? Your own sins, if you will, right? Your own crimes, your own mistakes, and clean up your own house first. Otherwise, all you're doing is amplifying the severity of the consequences that are already in play. Those who refuse to look at themselves and deal with themselves as they are in the light of truth, right, are also those who are the first ones to hurl stones of accusations, slander, and wish to silence and censor others, exposing what it is they have done, what they're doing, and what they plan to do. That is a zero-sum game. So, if you wish to have a nation where we can actually address the problems that we have and make it better for everybody, all Americans, and address how we can be a positive force, right, for truth and love and justice and mercy humbly in the broader world, you're going to have to deal with you. You know, just as it is for the people, so too it is for the nation. That's why I tell you these things, you know. So, the path that people and nations are on currently is a downward trajectory towards calamity. Just as you see people trying to silence others, censor others, mitigate, accuse, and slander others, so too you see nations doing the same thing. It's the same spirit behind it. They are proxies for a lie, and they're being led to their own destruction and the destruction of other people's tribes, tongues, and nations. It affects everybody. Nothing happens in a vacuum here. So, when I tell you these things, right, and when I tell you things like when you base your identity on anything in the temporal, right, anything, you're actually selling yourself short. You're focusing on the box instead of the contents of the box. Remember I talk about Amazon boxes, right? You order something really expensive and it comes in the mail, only a fool would throw out what you bought, right, and keep the box. So the same thing applies, right, in the more important things, like who you are as a person, what you're capable of, right? So if you're putting your identity in anything, right, that is temporal based only, you're actually chasing your own shadow. You're actually diminishing yourself and who and what you are and what you're capable of. And that is sad to me, because you're worth much more than the box. The contents, right, within the box is much more valuable, much more capable, has much more depth. That's one of the reasons why I continuously bring up truth and love and justice and mercy from humble and contrite hearts. You know, these themes, you know, are important. So, the direction that we've been going, right? Everybody has something to learn. If they refuse to learn it, well, it's what I keep telling you. Everybody will either be humbled and raised up, or humiliated and brought down. You can try to avoid that all you want. But you're not going to. It's built into everything here. That's why I continuously tell you that. I tell you that because I care. I also tell you that because you need to hear it. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear. And as it is for people, so too it is for nations. You know, there's some nations, some governments, and some people. I've warned. You know, if you continue going in the direction you're going, right, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. It's happening. You can deny it. It will not change the predicament. You know? So, you have to ask yourself why it is that others are beginning to get frustrated with you if you refuse to actually break out of your denial and acknowledge that you have a problem. What you're creating the conditions for is tough love. This isn't a political statement, right? This is a reality statement. So, I ask that you listen to me and you think through these things and you contemplate them. If you start getting edgy or you're wanting to turn this off or you're, you know, there's a reason. There's something that it's got a hold of you, right? You need to look at that. You need to ask yourself why that is. You need to ask yourself why it is, right? That there's something that rises up in you when you hear something like what I'm saying. Because that shows you where the chain is on your souls and the control in your minds and your bodies. Do you want to be free from that? Do you want the real thing, or do you want to continue chasing your shadow? That is your choice. Those are your choices to choose from. The longer that you hold on to it, the longer that you remain in the paradigm that you're in, the stronger your denial will get in relationship to your fear, your confusion, your anger, and your self-destructive behavior choices. That does not happen in a vacuum. It affects others. So, you need to consider these things because your time is running out to change your trajectory, even as the consequences for not doing so exponentially scale. Come to your senses. You have much more to gain by letting go of the lies and the shadow and living your life only for the box, your temporal shell of mortal coils, and focusing on what's most important, which is who you can be and who you truly are on the inside, the contents of the box. What does a box have? How many sides? 6. You've ever seen, have you ever seen the diagrams of a three-dimensional universe, right? Time and space in a 3D box, right? 6 sides. That's what you're born into in a temporal world. It's temporal for a reason. It's temporary. The 6 sides of that box are the confines of your temporality. Well, we use language like, you need to get outside the box. You need to think outside the box, right? So you also need to consider why it is I'm telling you this. For well over a year, you've had to social distance, right? How far? 6 feet. How deep do they bury you when you die? 6 feet deep. And what? A box. A 6-sided box. Why would you live only for the box when it's perishable, and deny what the box was designed to hold, which is what's truly valuable, and that is what is inside of you and who you really are? That's why I always tell you, nothing happens in a vacuum here. Everything is screaming something to you. Everything is signaling something to you. It's trying to tell you something, right? When you're focused on what everybody else is doing or saying, or how they view you, and you're not actually looking for a deeper reality, right? Asking the big questions, seeking truth, then what you're doing is you're actually chasing your shadow. And what is it a shadow of? Well, that 6-sided box. Don't sell yourself out to your shadow. Your shadow is only telegraphing to you where that 6-sided box goes. Into another 6-sided box 6 feet underground. When you die and you leave this world of temporality, it's telegraphing you to look deeper at something much more important, something of much more permanence, something that lasts beyond the temporal, yet puts the temporal into its proper context in a much deeper and fulfilling and beautiful way. That's why we use terminology like, when you hear Christians talk about Jesus is the way, the truth, the life, right? The way that leads to life, right, is narrow. Right? Broad is the path to destruction. Narrow is the way which leads to life. It's an inward to outward transformation, right? Starts with the contents of the box. That's true transformation from the inside out, because it puts all of this out here, right? It exposes what's at work in the box itself and everything beyond it, and puts things into a correct context. That's why we use terminology and metaphors like, light, the light of the truth. It exposes what was hidden in the darkness. It shows you what's been in front of you the entire time. It shows you a much bigger reality, a much deeper, richer reality that you live in. And it helps you understand the reality not only of what you're dealing with here, but it opens up an entire world to you that you cannot see with your 5 senses and your brain, your mind, your temporal body, right, and your perceptions, apart from the Spirit of truth. So think about that. What do you got to lose? Just saying.